Inventory surge, prices actually continuing to climb. Homes are taking longer to sell right now, and affordability becoming a pretty massive problem.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit about ADU, do's and don'ts.
All right, gang, first the stats, then the meaning. Trying to take all this gobbledygook that's out there and have it make sense for you to make a decision in 2025. And by the way, this isn't just any old month of 2025. As we enter into April, what is this? This is the gilded moment.
Yeah.
You know, that early spring and then early summer market. Historically, this has always been the best time for you to be thinking about a move and considering in earnest.
Yeah.
Because if you wait too long, you can end up paying more for a home on the way in. And if you wait too long, you can end up getting less for your home on the way out. Like, how does that make any sense? Well, first of all, we'll start with the numbers. Inventory surge. We've been talking about this pretty consistently. So here we are, another month where detached homes are up 27.5% in inventory and 47.1% in attached. That's nothing to shake a sticker at.
Yeah.
So that spring market, it's like, it's no longer like take what you can get at this moment right now. If you're being strategic, it's about standing or sitting stale.
Bing. You want to do a little sound effect there? Yeah, the princess one. Now, I agree. I think, it's that concept of like, why do auto dealers all collect in the same area, right? It seems like they're competition. Same thing when you start to get volume of transactions in real estate. It's because buyers and sellers are coming to the marketplace at the same time, and we start to see that around this time.
That's well said. Now, here's the anomalous. I'm actually going to bury that lead. I'll go with the other two that don't make sense before getting to the anomalous. So detached up 16.1% in market time. We're up to like a month and a half right now. Attached even more, 33%.
That's a big number.
So we're getting like almost closer to 2 months for that. So homes are still selling.
Yeah.
But man, the lazy listings are lagging.
I love it.
Little triple iteration there. So it's like, if you're selling, it's like, man, you got to nail that first impression or you're going to sit.
Yeah. What occurs to me is it feels like folks in the conversations that I'm having on the finance side, they say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go find the place that I like, and then I'll just sell my property real quick.
Yeah.
And that was true for a while, right? It was an afterthought, like, yeah, sell your property. And we're starting to see that longevity come up. We've had a couple of clients that have had to wait just an extra heartbeat, right? And now that's becoming more serious. So planning ahead on both the buy and the sell is super critical right now.
Or take advantage of our buy then sell program.
Yeah.
And then remove the, pressure cooker of living the most like horribly stressful, 2 or 3 months
It's
of your
stressful
life.
when your house isn't selling?
Allegedly.
And you're going to,
Allegedly. And if that weren't tough enough, now the pressure cooker is starting to make its way into closings. So fewer deals are closing. We're down almost 8.5% on detached and double that for attached, close to 16%.
Get into contract and then don't close?
No. Just overall sales volume down.
Okay.
Right? Which makes sense, right? Because if all those leading indicators are happening, like I just mentioned, if you're a buyer, you're like, oh, sweet, I want into some of that right away.
Right.
No, you're trying to time it, right? So it's like buyers are showing up, but only for the homes that earn it.
Yeah, I could see that where, if you had that one that's a little quirky, maybe needed some work that you weren't willing to do, and then next thing you know, you're on the market for a little bit longer than you expected.
Yeah. And then the issue of affordability. I mean, man, has this ever not been a pain point for San Diego, right? And the truth is, it's even wild because if you think of California as a vis-a-vis from the other two major metropolitan areas, in this case, the Bay Area and LA, we're always the ones that are on sale.
Yeah.
Right? So like post-COVID, when you didn't actually have to walk into an office anymore, that's not aging well, by the way. Everybody's like, get your ass back in here. Everybody's like, cool, man. Getting rid of this house up here that I've made a small fortune on. Go live in a way more desirable area. I'm not biased at all, like San Diego. And so we were like the big influx. So a lot of people were leaving the state, but the most interesting thing in their nuanced was people were moving down to San Diego from within a state. But in terms of the affordability index, it's only 25 right now as a metric number for detached and down to 40 for attached. So the concept of this is important. Is this is not a market of desperation by any stretch. It's one of disconcernment. So when that number falls down, the affordability index, it's just that. It's just that much harder to scrap up all the money that you're making already, because people aren't really making like that much more money at their jobs. But while the rates have gone up and the prices have not gone down, the affordability index is the one that's getting kicked in the chin.
Yeah. Yeah, we're seeing that on a client-to-client basis. I mean, San Diego is a wonderful place because there's a lot of folks that make a lot of money, right? You can be in tech, you can be an engineer, you can be in the military. There's a lot of ways to make a lot of money here. And so the prices are reflective of that. However, what we're seeing in affordability, and the conversation that I have, is twofold. It's not just, can I get you the money? That's one conversation sometimes, but it's probably not the most important conversation. The most important conversation is, can you see yourself making this payment over time? And so what can you do about that? There are a number of ways that you can change strategies in your financing structure. You could talk about buying and selling, or simply just making sure that you're stacking appropriately. Sometimes it actually makes more sense to keep your home and rent it out. Not always, but there are situations that make that sense. So having affordability conversations with somebody that can guide you through the different structure is really important, especially as we see statistically on a more global level that affordability is becoming less common.
It's a plug for you too, because you know you could walk into your bank, your brick and mortar that you got your checking and savings with, and there's a loan desk over there, and they can sit down. You give them their FICO, give them your income, give them a down payment, and they'll spit out a potential for a pre-approval.
Right.
But is that like an actual mortgage plan?
Right.
Where they actually take your entire pecuniary profile, they draw it in and they interweave it with goals, right? And then even things like family creation, how long you plan on living in San Diego, right? There's all these like macro factors that turn into the micro of that actual purchase power plan. Right. And when you think of that, then all things break open. Like, do I even need a 30-year fix? Can I take advantage of maybe an adjustable rate mortgage? Like, oh my God, is that a 4-letter word? They're coming back, gang. The bank's purse strings are opening up a little bit because there's not as many transactions going down. So it's creating a lot of fresh thought for nuance when it comes to the financing wing.
Yeah, that's for sure happening. And when you talk about affordability, that's kind of a 0 and 1. It's on or off, like yes or no. But when you talk about a mortgage plan, you're talking about how can I get this first one or this second one or whatever it is, and then what's going to happen to me in the future. And that's a really critical strategy position to be in when you can say, hey, not only am I working on this first one right now, but I'm keeping an eye on the prize, which is I want to own multiple properties.
Yeah.
That requires planning from day one.
So I had the luxury, Jer, of sitting in on a room with a panel from Altos Research, and that they're like the juggernauts of the real estate data, right? So it's like if you want to learn about a baseball swing, you go grab a Yankee. Or a Dodger, I guess, is maybe more zeitgeisty in this moment, and you break it down. So they're like the Dodgers right now of the real estate data game. And they said two things which jumped off the panel at me. Number one, they talked about interest rates, and number two, they basically stared into the camera and deadpan and said, "Hey, if you're thinking that there's a real estate crash coming, you might be on the poor side of history because they're just not seeing it." So there's a lot of buyers right now. They're like, hey, man, I'm seeing all these leading indicator numbers. They're all pointing down, 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 down. Even though prices are still up, like, is something about to give? And they said, yeah, actually, we do see prices starting to soften in 25.
Right.
And I was like, wow, that's the first time I've heard anybody actually say that.
Admit it.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, it's speculative to say, man, prices have got to give, but we're not seeing it in the data. It
hasn't happened.
Keeps going up, keeps going up, keeps going up. And they're saying, hey, I don't know, 25 is looking like it might actually peel down a little bit. Now, here's what's interesting, though. If you hear that as a buyer, you're like, son of a gun, I was right.
Yeah.
Thank God I timed it. I'm going to get... And while that might not be untrue, the challenge is the little brother of rates, right? So we all know now, because we've been playing in this game for long enough, that this entire market is propped up by rates. It reminds me of those little toys you would get at like the dollar store, was like the giraffe, and you squeeze the bottom and the giraffe folds like a lawn chair, and then you let it go and it pops back up. As soon as these rates, and they actually have this magic number. So right now the rates are improving, right? They're like 6.
Slow and steady.
6.5. About 6.5, which is great. No more 7s right now.
Right.
But they said if that rate drops down to about 6 or 6.25, they're not even saying 5s.
Yeah.
They're saying 6 to 6.25. all hell is probably going to break loose because they've identified that being kind of the magic number where everybody furiously starts to run back who's been strategically sitting on the sidelines and jumping back into the market. So where does the rubber meet the road? Well, imagine if the prices are softening a little bit, and imagine that's taking place. You're like, all right, I got this. And then if the rate overnight drops down, next thing you know, the open house that you were looking for on Saturday doesn't have 2 people stumbling through it all nervously and anxiously. They've got 10 to 20.
Yeah.
And that one that maybe didn't get an offer of 1 or 2 now has 5 or 6.
Yeah.
What happens to the price overnight?
Well, let's put this in context too, because if you talk to anybody out there who already owns a home, let's say, and they're open to buying another one.
Yeah.
But they're like, I got my 4.5% interest rate.
Right.
That's not that far off from 6. Like, yeah, 4.5 to 7. You start to think like, come on, I'm not an idiot here, but
Right.
like 4.5 to 6. You know, and there's other people floating in that 5% range. So we're not so far off from that being no longer the thing that forces someone to be, stubborn about
Especially because this is kind of now the new normal.
Right.
Like, unless you're just going to stay in that house forever, which cool, that's cool, I got that. But for the rest of homeowners that maybe had an extra kid or maybe got a promotion or maybe they want to move to a different area or they want to get into a school set, all the other normal reasons why people move.
It's those dang kids.
Right. Yeah.
For the most part, right? Having that conversation all the time. Like, I've been running numbers for some of my clients for like a year. And they're just like, hey, we need to get a new house. We're like busting.
Yeah.
And they just couldn't justify the move when the rates were so high.
Yeah.
But we are getting to that point where it's that ping, like, hey, where are they? So we, from a client interaction experience, we're feeling that. People are starting to send a little email, pick up the phone and say, hey, Jeremy, where are things now?
Yeah.
Because we're really interested in making this move still.
Yeah. So here's an interesting story when you think about the impact that sort of this new world of real estate is now starting to have. And what I mean, like post-COVID, right? Like the idea that a lot of more people are working from home, than before. And so they're starting to see now the data catch up as the trailing indicator. Yeah. And there is a work from home impact. Because, dude, remote work is actually now becoming more norm. So buyers are prioritizing homes with dedicated office spaces. I mean, dude, we've had office space in our crib ever since the cut, right? Yeah. And it's a cool little tax thing too. Yeah. Not that we're tax people. But this trend is actually driving demand for larger homes or properties with adaptable spaces. For sure. Which is something I would love for you to talk about in the ADU side. This is super highlighting the importance of home offices right now for today's buyer in this market.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's run that right into the ADU conversation, right? So folks are out there right now, and maybe they got a little backyard. I can't tell you how many of my clients say we want to buy a house that either has an ADU or has space for an ADU. It's practically the majority of the conversations that we're having. Something to be careful about. A lot of these ADUs are not legal. They've been put together without permits. They were a pool house. Yep. They were a shed. They put some walls up. It was an office for a little. They put a bathroom. It evolves.
And you just described your ADU that you built in your house.
That's my whole house.
So, we're actually not kidding. Although you did do permits.
Thank you.
Very good.
So the idea is to pay attention to the pros and cons of doing this legally versus kind of off the books,
bootleg.
Right? Because what's happening is it's not necessarily that you'll get caught while you own the home. Mm-hmm. You can, your neighbor might turn you in, but it's more the conversation of what happens when you go to sell that home.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example. I'm working with a client right now. They are buying this beautiful home. There's a freaking kitchen in the garage. A kitchen. There's no ceiling. Like, I don't know what they were doing, if they stopped short, if they just liked having that thing out there. It was weird, but my buyer wants to buy that house. They're probably going to tear the damn thing out. But guess what? The lender doesn't dig it at all.
No.
Now, some lenders are okay with it, but remember, anytime you're doing something that has a little bit of risk, how does that play out? Mm-hmm. You pay for it in the rate, right? So looser parameters, pay for it in the rate. So yes, of course, we can close that loan. The problem is it's not at the rate that they were hoping.
No.
And so as a seller, now they're sitting there dealing with a buyer who's struggling with financing because of a decision they made with a kitchen. And that's something you really want to be careful of. Think about the pros and cons of doing it legally versus kind of behind the scenes where you might not come back to bite you for a little bit.
Yeah. I love this one. So we are the Greenhouse Group, and that's a whole separate podcast we could talk about. But one of the things that we love are the 6 tenets of green lifestyle. Right, so quickly, what is that? So energy efficiency, water efficiency, indoor air quality, reduced, recycled, reused materials, which, by the way, headquarters of the Greenhouse Group is a model for that, FYI, if you want to come hang out. Then there's like the green effectiveness quotient, like can I bike to work? Can I walk to my grocery store? Is there a park next door I've got to drive to? And then smart home tech. Right? Can, ability to spend, $300 on a thermostat that might save me $20 extra a month.
Right.
It's always a good joke.
Yeah.
But anyway, that concept though, so now builders are really starting to get it. So with new construction and new development, they are increasingly focusing on building homes with multifunctional spaces with eco-friendly features, reflecting the changing buyer and all the preferences we just talked about.
Right.
So it's a lot of we're saying it's finally starting to mature
Right.
and come more to life. So these really highlight that shift towards more sustainability and flexible living solutions. Hallelujah and amen, brother.
Yeah.
How long have you been waiting for this?
Oh my God, it feels like we've been dragging a bull. Like everyone likes to talk about it. I mean, this has been a popular conversation forever.
Yeah.
The problem has been the reality of it just hasn't been there. And like you said, like some of the upgrades, they don't pay for themselves. I bought a freaking water heater that was super expensive, and it saves me a little bit of money, but it ain't doing all that. So, and that's because I had to pay to replace it. I had to get a plumber in there. So the overall cost was very expensive for me to shift in that direction.
Yeah. And you're not probably selling your home for that much more just because you have all those features. Right?
I will show the water heater.
Yeah.
I'll be like, look at this thing. It's super cool.
Instead of going to the living room, you just go right down into the crawl space.
Yeah. And when you're listing it for me, I'll be like, how much more did you get for that water heater?
And I'll lie to you.
Terrific. It's a good partnership.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. And there's so many cool little things that you can do in your home around water conservation and that sort of thing. But I love the tech piece because as the tech piece becomes more integrated, it's easier to do. And it's saving money, saving energy automatically.
Yeah.
And that's the sweet spot.
Yeah.